Hey, welcome back to the show. Super excited for today's show. It really feels like a first day back at school, and look, it's just really cool. But I wanted us to start. Thank you so much for everyone that just tuned into last week's video, and your response and love for Ollie was overwhelming. Look, there was just so much there. I couldn't really believe it. It was really cool. And Mango, you got some big shoes to fill, mate. Really. He's a good boy. Hey? Yeah. But thanks so much, guys. I couldn't respond to all the comments. It was absolutely overwhelming how many there were, but I read through every single one, and there were some really touching messages in there, some support. It was absolutely beautiful. Thank you, guys. Well, anyways, getting down to business, it's been 40 years since Exodus released Bonded by Blood, and in my opinion, it's an absolute thrash masterpiece. Just a really simplistic Marshall-based sort of tone. That whole tone in that era was just really cool in the Bay Area. And essentially, it's just a Marshall JCM 800 that's just boosted with a bit of mids or an OD or something of that nature. And for today, instead of just giving you the tone with one specific pedal, I thought we'd just go through. I'll share a half a dozen of my favorites. One's yet to be tested. It's just going to be really cool. We'll try and just get that mid boost exactly the way it is, but let's get on with it. And so for the setup today, all the pedals we're going to run are just in the front of the amp. We're not utilizing the effects loop in any way. I'm going through the JCM 800, the SC20. This is just a really cool amp. You can see the settings there. It's fairly neutral. We've got a little bit more bass than usual because we're going to be pushing some mids. And outputting from the JCM 800, we're going through the 2 notes Torpedo Captor X, and that's sending a signal straight to my audio interface into Logic. So it's a really raw recording. And what the Torpedo Captor X does, in short, it's a really ingenious idea. It takes the load of the Marshall JCM 800, the whole load that would usually go to a speaker. I'm not running any speakers in the room, and it really just simulates a certain speaker and a specific microphone up to that speaker and sends that whole signal to your audio interface. So you can record silently, you can practice silently. The birds are never deafened, but that's the whole goings on with the Torpedo Captor X. I think it's an ingenious invention. But this is just the guitar amp on its own with no distortion at all in the front end. And you can hear there, you can almost simulate that style guitar tone with just about any amp. It's just a bass line, it's just really cool. And usually what people do to build on that tone, they just add like an Ibanez Tube Screamer or a Boss Super Overdrive SD1 to that. And absolutely nothing wrong with either of these. They're super cool. Right now with the Ibanez Tube Screamer, I like to run it with the level all the way up and the drive all the way down. It's almost just like it just adds, like it focuses the whole tone, adds a bit more mids. I'll be using the Boss loop station on the floor just so that we can record and just loop sections of riff and cycle through the different pedals just so you can hear the difference. And you get the idea just with the overdrives there. They're totally different the way they work. The Ibanez Tube Screamer is symmetrical in its clipping, meaning it clips a little bit off the top of the signal and the bottom of the signal. It makes a really smooth sort of liquid, more saturation. And the Boss SD1, it only clips the actual waveform on one side only. And just so it creates more of like a nastier, grittier sort of tone. It's just, neither is better, it's just what you actually want to get out of it. I do find that the SD1 removes a little bit of the bass out of the mix, but it's alright, they're just really fun. But a way to really spice up an overdrive, I find, is if you just run like an EQ in front of it. All these pedals are in the same order that you see, but if I have the MXR 6-band EQ and I just boost a little bit of mids in front of the Ibanez, let's say, it'll just add that little bit more aggression to the tone. And again, I'll just play a riff and we'll go through it. And hopefully you can see there, it's pretty apparent just the way that the MXR 6-band works. You can really just hear the distinction between the 4 and the 800 hertz there. Just the way that they sort of push it up, and you just get a different sort of attack and just aggression on the top of the tone. It's just really cool the way that works with either of the two overdrives. And I often use that technique just a lot, just to really add just a slight bit more hair to the tone. You don't really have to crank it all the way up that much. Just like the tiniest little bit just on top of the overdrives often is just the secret sauce you need just to get that right amount of aggression. Super cool. But so the next pedal I've got just to really step into that Bay Area sort of thrash tone, works perfect with the 800, is the Origin Effects MEQ driver. And this is a favorite I often use on the show. It's a really unique pedal, and I find it can just add a subtle amount of difference just to your tone. And sometimes that's all you need when you've got a JCM 800. You just want to add that slight bit of edge just to sort of go from Kill 'Em All structure through to like some early Megadeth into Exodus, get like almost like that Slayer tone as well. You can go right into that Hell Awaits tone. And all these records, to me, they just have like the coolest vibe, just the way that they were all written. They're not perfect in any way. You can hear Bailoff's vocals just hitting and clipping the red zone and everything on those records. And I just think they're so cool. There's no formula that they use. It's just, they're just absolutely timeless. I love them. But anyway, the MEQ driver. That is a cool song. It's actually a really, really difficult riff to play. There's like hammer and pull off, but you've got to keep pedaling really hard. And if you have too much distortion going on, that whole riff just falls apart. You've got to almost have like a blues tone. So it's unreal. But anyway, next, that's the MEQ driver by Origin Effects. Next. So this next pedal, I'm sorry it's not on the shelves right now, guys, but for the last few years, I've been working really closely with the guys at Master Effects. I'm just super impressed with how they tackle the problems, with how they build things from the ground up. Is just an absolute genius when it comes to this work. It's easy for me. I just come up with like an idea of what I want, but then it's their problem to try and turn that into a pedal. Right now, this is just in the beta stages, but I'll try and explain it. I just think it's so cool. So my thinking going into this pedal, and what makes it really unique, is I've had the MXR 6-band in the back of my mind. It's a really fun pedal that I like to use, but in this sense, it's totally different. Yes, it has the 6 bands and they're in the same frequency range, but I wanted a certain 2 bands just to really hone in and almost be an overdrive. So out of all these 6 bands, the 800 and the 1.6 band, when you engage it, They actually work like a gain boost as well, and you've got a grit dial here that you can turn up, and it only affects gain and distortion on those frequencies. So you can boost your whole front end signal if you want and get those lows and things, but I don't want those to break up. I only want like the 800K to be, or 800 Hertz to be breaking up. It's a concept I've been thinking about for ages, that you have an EQ and I only want to distort a certain focus, like a certain peak in frequency. So at the same time, I want it to be able to turn right back and dial the grit right down, utilize it in the effects loop, and it's just a really clean EQ that doesn't alter the tone whatsoever in like a gain way. It just alters the tone as far as an EQ is concerned. So hopefully you follow with that and understand what I'm trying to put down. It's been an absolute headache for Master Effects, is getting so close with it, but just now I thought I'd just show you the tone, and it's such a cool tone and a fun pedal. And so you can see the way that those sliders just reacted with that tone. It's killer. It's going to be an absolutely amazing pedal when it's released, but for now it's just, I'm still working on it, Tim's still working on it. It's so cool. But and so next, again from Master Effects, this brings us to the EQFH Pro. This is straight out of the 80s, and this is a pedal version of the rack mount Furman PQ3. It was all through the records in the 1980s. This is most likely the sound that you would hear from a lot of those records in the 80s. It's an exact replica of the PQ3, warts and all. They did an amazing job recreating this at Master Effects. Loads of people get really overwhelmed just with a full parametric EQ. You've got your band of the low, the band of the mid, and the band of the high. But on the surface, the easiest way just to go with these, we're going for an 80s sort of thrash tone. The bass is cut back a little bit. The mids are boosted, and for the highs for this sort of record, you can leave it fairly neutral. But I really like to find where like a high mid sits really well, and you can just add a slight little bit of aggression. That way you get some two peaks within in that mid sort of region, like a low mid and a high mid, and you can play them off and just get like a really articulate sort of sound going on. But essentially that's what I'll be going for. We'll just play a riff and see how it goes. And I played around a lot there just to really try and show you how I like my process for creating the tone with these, especially in the front end. It's not the same as trying to do it through the effects loop. In the front end, I find if you really just turn up the gain, I get the Q band, so I really make it a really narrow Q, so it's just like a spike of frequency, and that way your ears can really harness where that spike sits in the mix. So I bring that right down just so it's not too quacky, but you can exactly hear where you want the frequency to be. And then I just set the actual frequency. You can scroll across the actual range, work out where you think like those mids sound best to be boosted. And right at that point, I just bring the bandwidth back, or the Q, and I just open it up just so it gets rid of that unwanted sort of quack about it, but it opens it up just so you can sort of hear some of those frequencies coming through, but it just balances out the tone. And then I try and just play that off in the high band, utilizing some of those lower high mids, if you know what I mean. Like I try and just get them both to spike in similar regions, and you can get some really unique tone with that. It's the easiest way to try and make it work. It really is just a process of elimination. And I really do think that the more you use these, your ears can actually focus in and hear things that you didn't think you could hear, and frequencies that really just pop out and stand out in a mix. But it's just a really cool pedal, and I love using it for the front end. So anyone that's asking me what's the best between like the EQ from Hell, the EQ from Hell Pro, both of them are my favorite parametric EQs you can get on the market, hands down. I just love these two, but they really have two different purposes. The traditional EQ from Hell, it's just a really clean parametric EQ, the 3-band, and that's best for the effects loop. I can get some fantastic tones with that in the effects loop, but this, it's great for the front end. It's great even if you just utilize it. You can set it on the low input, just like Dimebag did. He had the MXR 6-band like pumping right up going into that. If you have too much signal going into a lot of these EQs, they just clip and go red. So the trick to try and get a lot out of them is you can run into the low band and just bring the whole level back down, but you can boost those frequencies right up. So many different ways to get great tones, but Bonded by Blood, guys, it is an absolute banger of a record. It'll kick your ass to this day. I just absolutely love it. Bailoff was a legend. It's all the riffs are so fun, and but I really hope you enjoyed that video, guys. There's just so many different ways that you can go about creating similar tones with so many different and diverse pedals. But until next time, take care. I'll see you later.